All right, that's been enough time. So we will get going. So the first thing to say is thank you to Bob for your top core visual extravaganza. It was certainly entertaining. And if you don't know, if top core doesn't stick in your mind after that, I do suggest you go and check it out on the after session recording because it was memorable. And then thank you also to Dita. Your session, I know at this moment is still going on. I can see it on the other screen. Really good session that explains how you go from nothing to a successful SCOM deployment. It's the sort of session that comes with a year's worth of experience, and I thank you for it. All right, let's take a look at what's coming up now next. So next up we have, wait a few minutes, we have our first panel discussion of SCOMathon 2022, possibly my favorite piece of SCOMathon. I really like the panel discussions, they're great. We're going to be discussing SCOM and the cloud, and we have a great panel, which I'll introduce when we get there. Then we have the EMEA keynote, which is from the SCOM product group, and they're going to be talking about SCOM 2022, as well as what's up next from the SCOM product group. That's led by Anka. And then at 11:40, we have Wei Hao Lim talking about fun with advanced dashboards in the SCOM operations consoles. This is the native SCOM console. No third-party things required at this point, which is cool. But first, a quick word from our sponsors, speaking of dashboards and visualizations. So Squared Up, our first sponsor, who I want to thank for giving us the chance to be here is SCOMathon today, who provide actionable dashboards and analytics for SCOM, providing a modern visualization there on top of the SCOM console. There's so much cool data inside of SCOM, it's making it work for you and do more that Squared Up will enable you to do, as well as join the dots between all of your other tools. Then you have Cookdown, which is the company I represent. There's a little clue on my t-shirt there. So we connect the dots between SCOM and all of your other tools to let you both raise alerts in SCOM from any tool that will support a webhook, and raise alerts from SCOM in any tool that will support a webhook. So this is things like incidents in an ITSM tool, or messages in a notifications platform like Slack or Teams. Everything you need to know is at cookdown.com, where you can see it and try it out. And if there are any questions, you can ask them there. We have a session later on as well. Then we have NICE. NICE provide detailed management packs for SCOM for pretty much everything, ranging from the most sort of common scenarios like Microsoft 365 to the weird and wonderful like the Power Platform or Domino. They have a free log files MP as well, which is worth checking out. It's worth having in your armory. And if you don't see what you need, they can build it for you, which is great. Then we have Microsoft. It's great that Microsoft are on board again for another year as sponsors. They're clearly invested in you guys as the SCOM community. And this year they're running a survey where they're asking for input from you guys. They want to hear what you guys have to say about SCOM as a platform. And that will become apparent as they are all over this event today. They're going to be in the panel discussions and everything, the product group. And I think that's awesome. What better way to be heard by the SCOM product group than by telling them face to face? And your opportunity to do that is coming up later on. Then we have OpsLogix, who are a world leader in business critical native management packs. They cover everything from VMware to Kubernetes. Their session was earlier on today, and I recommend you check it out if you haven't yet seen it. Then we have Gritmatics, who provides Citrix specialities, essentially. They focus on hybrid cloud monitoring with SCOM. It's worth checking that out. Go to experience.gritmatics.com, log in with username and password SCOMathon to see it in action. Then we have Topcore, who had their vendor session earlier on today. They're a knowledge partner for SCOM. So if you can't get the questions you need answered by a bit of Googling, Topcore are who you need to go to, providing everything from training to maintenance for SCOM. Then we have Silex, who are a household name in SCOM, I would say. They're known for MP authoring over the years, providing great value in helping you become successful with MP authoring. Go check them out at silec.com/SCOMathon. Then we have TechWave. TechWave do management packs for SCOM focusing on Citrix, PostgreSQL, and Cloudera. Do go check them out too. Then we have Protect.org. I'm being quick now because I'm out of time here. Protect.org are compliance and security experts monitoring your infrastructure for compliance issues. So if you're HIPAA or FIPS or something like that compliance, they will be able to show you where you're not compliant in their tool, all surfaced via their online portal. They had one session earlier on today, their vendor session from Dion. Dion has another session later on where he shows an SCCM management pack that he wrote as an alternative to the Microsoft one. All right. That's sponsors over and done with. Let's have a quick look at how we're doing with our charity appeal. Every attendee for every session, for every attendee of every session, we are donating $1 to the British Red Cross, to their Ukraine appeal specifically. What better time to donate to this charity, which I'm sure you will all agree is very worthy of our support. The last session from Dieter raised $92, which brings the total for SCOMathon to $558, which Gripmatics are essentially matching. NICE are donating $50 per attendee per session, so that brings their total to $279, meaning the grand total is at $1,395. Pretty good, we're getting there. Good news. The SCOM Cafe remains open all day to allow you to network with your peers and to ultimately answer all of your SCOMmy questions, which is great. And that is all I need to say before setting up the next session, more or less anyway. This is going to be my last break link. So Tim, the reason why you're here is because in the next break after the panel, you'll be taking the reins of power from me, and Tim, just wanted to quickly introduce you. You're the COO at Square. What is the COO again? Remind me.
Chief Dog's Body, I think, but Chief Operating Officer is officially. But
sounds good.
Yeah, definitely time for the B team to take over for the next few hours. Thanks, Bruce. You've done an awesome job as always. Very impressed.
I'm just warming up for you. It's all good. It's all good. So we will have Tim from the next break. But without further ado, let's hand over to the panel discussion, which is on SCOM and the cloud. So this panel discussion is chaired by myself. So panelists lurking in the background, now it's time to turn on your webcams and come into the foreground. You know who you are. You're all here. I'm going to let you guys introduce yourself. I'll tell you when to do that, and then we'll start talking. So our panel has years and years of combined SCOM experience, made up of speakers and the SCOM product group themselves. So starting with Max, would you like to start by introducing yourself? You are muted, I think. The joys of Zoom.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so my name is Max. Thanks, Bruce. I usually meet New Year first because I live in New Zealand, with the most distant time zone. And yeah, previous years I was designing, build, and develop management packs, and this is where most of my experience come from.
Sounds good. Thank you. Dieter, would you like to go next? Although everyone's your session, but would you like to go next anyway?
Yeah, well, my name is Dieter. I have been in the monitoring space since MON 2000. So I jumped through a lot of hoops, helped a lot of enterprises with their operations manager implementation and monitoring as such. I have a bit of an ITIL background, so the services were involved as well. And I'm a cloud and data center management MVP, and I also did a lot of helping people, connecting or at least having SCOM working together with their cloud footprint in a hybrid environment. So a lot of questions there. So I hope a lot of questions are asked in that field as well.
I'm sure they will be, no doubt at all. Michael, would you like to go next?
Sure. Michael Ford, about 25 years in IT, specializing in monitoring. Wasn't initially a SCOM guy. I've become a SCOM guy. Used to do a lot of other monitoring tools, SolarWinds, etc. But SCOM's won me over. So yeah, I've been dabbling with SCOM since SCOM 07, so a bit of a while. I'm a SCOM groupie. I've come to every one of these, but I hide in the shadows behind the scenes. But I was asked to front up, and I think it was a good thing to do. Doing Australian government work at the moment, 12 to 19 migration is SCOM, which is a lot of fun. It's a hard version migration between those two versions. Experimenting with SCOM and virtual reality at the moment, which is lots of fun. SCOM needs lots of real estate space, so it's great to have 100 monitors around you in VR on the roof and the floor while you're doing your SCOM work.
That sounds good to me. In particular, SCOM and VR was particularly keen to see that in Bob's session earlier. I'd never heard the term SCOMathon groupie until today there. I didn't realize we had those, but good to know that's the thing. Thank you very much. Stoyan, would you like to go next?
Hi, guys. Hi, Bruce. I'm, let's say, the newbie amongst all the guys here. I have only 10 years experience with SCOM. Exactly like Dieter, I'm a Microsoft MVP in Cloud and Data Center. I work for a Swiss-based consulting company, and the last couple of years I'm doing almost only SCOM, starting from infrastructure, deployments, optimization, tuning, and of course some management pack altering stuff.
Perfect. Thank you very much. You're also our first keynote speaker of the day, so thank you for standing up and doing that. Thank you very much. Shashank, would you like to go next?
Sure. So yeah, I'm Shashank. I'm representing the SCOM product group today. And unlike years of experience with SCOM, my engagement with the product is relatively less. But I can talk to you about how we think about the future here. And definitely the topic on the panel.
Indeed. And just as a hint, guys, if you have any questions relating to the future of SCOM, Shashank's your man. I haven't introduced myself. I guess I'll do that quickly. I'm Bruce Cullen. I'm the Director of Products at Cookdown. I'm Captain AdProd and Captain SCOMathon as well. I wear many hats. And so it's with great pleasure that I kick off today's panel on SCOM and the clouds. So the whole gist of this topic is this has come out through the likes of the Big SCOM survey. Stoyan, you picked up on this on your keynote at the top of the SCOMathon. But the thing that people are most interested in using SCOM for, its biggest potential gap right now, is monitoring cloud workloads, essentially. There is loads that can be done already. There is obviously the likes of the Azure Management Pack, but there's loads more that kind of could be done. This is going to be increasingly important. So my first question to you all is, where do you see SCOM being able to shine in the world of cloud monitoring? And who wants to go first? Don't all fight at once there for the mic.
I'll probably go first. The funny thing is that when Azure Monitor came along, they were like, from time to time, they were like, evil twins or anything. They were stepping on each other's territory. And a lot of questions came to mind. Should we use Operations Manager or should we use Azure Monitor? And the best question, of course, the best answer was, of course, both. But if you see I'm working now for a big bank in Belgium as well, and they have the same question. So you have the possibility to extend Ops Manager to the cloud, of course, but the Azure Management Pack is gaining a lot of, let's say, traction as well. So it all comes down to where you want to have let's say the pinpoint or the heavy load of your monitoring. If you still have a heavy load of monitoring, in my belief, in on-prem, there's no point of trying to monitor it as a monitor. But if you're born in the cloud, there's no point of going into Ops Manager just to monitor your environment. The only thing I always tell people is try to have one point of entry for your ITIL process, meaning either it's Azure Monitor, either it's Ops Manager, but try to have one tool which is connected to the start of your ITSM process.
I agree with that as a tip. One thing before I bring anyone else in, just to quickly say that I should have said at the top, is this is a panel discussion, not just for our panel, but also for you as attendees. So if you'd like to speak, click the raise your hand button and I or someone else will give you powers to come and speak as well. So does anyone want to pick up on what Dieter has just said there?
I would like to. Sorry, Michael.
You go first. You go, Sion.
I just wanted to confirm what Dieter said, because I even did a session, I think 1 or 2 years ago, and the title of the session was actually SCOM versus Azure Monitor, competitors or allies. So what I'm trying to say here is that I have countless examples of customers who in the early stages of adopting Azure Monitor just migrated to Azure Monitor fully, and then with the time they just found out that Azure Monitor cannot do what SCOM does on-prem, and they just reverted back or went back to SCOM, using SCOM and the whole idea of management packs. So the essence of the whole thing is, I think, those two tools should not be put against each other, but should be always, let's say, like allies, used together in combination, and that's where the power comes from.
Makes sense. Michael, you wanted to add?
I just wanted to say, one of the things that people have to realize is Azure isn't the cloud. The cloud's a lot bigger than Azure. And we're my current customer, there's a big rise in multi-cloud adoption, right? And AWS, I think it's 3-to-1 for more implementation over Azure. And the great thing about SCOM is that you've got a tool here that gives you a single pane of glass for on-prem, for VM, for ESX, for Hyper-V, for Azure, for AWS, the lot. That's a big deal. That's a big deal. A lot of people think, we'll just move to Azure Monitor. Well, that's fine for Azure. What about AWS? SCOM's fantastic in AWS. In my speech, I talked about AWS has a fantastic management pack. It's getting old now. Works great. And that's a big deal because people don't want to look at multiple places. They want to look at one place, and that's where it shines. That's where SCOM shines.
Yeah, I agree. Although picking up on what you just said there, so the AWS MP is good, but it's certainly not spanking new anymore. And I'm sure there are things that aren't monitored. But picking up on the unloved cloud of the three key ones, the Google Cloud. Is anyone aware of a solution for Google Cloud? Anyone seen a community offering or anything that will help monitor that? Because those are the big three, really. AWS.
IaaS works everywhere, right?
IaaS
works everywhere. So it doesn't, like, as if you've got IaaS cloud, SCOM will work on it. So it's only PaaS and we're in SaaS where you're starting to have to do some clever stuff around SOAP.
That's the thing. I mean, if you have IaaS, the workload will stay the same whether it's running on another platform. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So SCOM will always behave the same way, because the Windows image or the Linux image is the same. It's just the platform which is different. So if you move towards platform monitoring, you need something that can read everything in. I mean, to be honest, you can write as much as possible yourself because the APIs are there, but then you need to look at whether you're gaining something out of it.
Makes total sense. Also, just picking up on the comment you made in the chat window, there is no one tool to rule them all. I couldn't agree more with you there. It's all, in my view, it's all about using the right tool for the right job. And in some cases that's SCOM, and in some cases that isn't SCOM. If I were to put my vendor hat on, I would start talking about Squared Up. But I'm going to go to you, Shashank, now instead of do that.
I think all great points, right? I think you summarized it beautifully, Bruce, that depending on the workload that you're using, you got to choose the right service to use. Now you can depend on Azure PaaS and Azure SaaS services with all the work around hybrid. There is tech available to run them on-prem or on AWS or on GCP. But for that, Azure Monitor is really customized and provisioned to monitor those services the best. If you need health models and if you want to be in control, there's nothing better than SCOM, and it works across all IaaS, running wherever, like Michael said. So if you're on AWS services or GCP services, the same logic applies as is. Now, the beauty of it is with Azure Monitor or with Azure MP, with the Teams MP, with the likes of AWS MP, we do make it possible to bring all that data into SCOM, but you probably won't get the same finesse if that's your primary workload.
Makes sense. Sounds good.
I would also maybe would like to add from like more groundish and technical perspective. So traditionally in past years when we run our application on premises, and that was like two big pies here. So infrastructure itself, starting from our hardware and operating systems and virtual machines, and the actual application. And perhaps because it was all on-prem, more attention was paid to actual infrastructure, and infrastructure was more crucial for application health rather than application specific monitoring, right? But now when we moved into clouds, especially if it's not just virtual machine migrated to cloud, but pure cloud serverless function, we like all experience become not irrelevant, but there is like an empty space. So we delegated everything to Microsoft or Amazon, and we have nothing to do. But what is important and what I discuss with my internal clients always. So the main thing you really care about is not like how much CPU you're consuming or how many bytes left on a disk. What is important is your application and running, responding in reasonable times. And therefore, the main thing is actually like synthetic transaction monitoring. And here SCOM with its extensibility and inbound, embedded wizards when you can create any web request and analyze it. And yeah, with custom management packs, it's probably a great place to start with high-level application monitoring to ensure that your clients, your API consumers actually get what they need.
Anyone want to pick up on that, or should I? Or should I? All right. Well, I was interested to dig into that a bit more. So synthetic transaction monitoring, so talking more about application monitoring, outside in kind of stuff, rather than focusing on infrastructure monitoring. I was wondering what the panel's thoughts on how that plays into the future of monitoring versus sort of just conventional infrastructure monitoring with the cloud in mind.
If you have a look at some of the...
Sorry, Michael.
You guys
did it again.
Michael, you can go first this time.
Michael goes first.
I was just saying, like, if you have a look at some of the good custom management packs around for the cloud now, you know, the monitoring guys extension to 365, how much of it is based around synthetic transaction work now? So it's... Yeah, there's a good example of a modern MP that's only been released recently that is SCOM. It's heavily cloud-based and it's heavily based around doing synthetic transactions. Yeah, that's all I wanted to say.
Sounds good. Stoyan?
Synthetic transactions was actually one of the feedback points regarding the features users would like to see in future SCOM releases. And this comes from the Big SCOM survey. I know it pretty well because I studied also well in order to prepare for my session. So this is, I think, in my opinion, it's a pretty important feature. When it comes down to application monitoring being requested by users, tells me that also this is the opinion of others. So, yeah.
I can actually give you a practical example. So there are vendors with solutions which provide S3 enabled object storage. So they like mimicking AWS. and a company where I'm working, we provide that service on commercial base to our clients, and they actually asked how we can ensure that our clients receive that service in timely manner. So what I actually did a very simple management pack, but it connects to that storage, upload 5 meg file or whatever you configure, download the same file, compare the file is intact, measure upload download time, and it actually did a very good job. So when they have some disk issues and everything looked normal from backend perspective, but there was big delays on client, especially upload operation, and they were able to actually find that problem even earlier than internal monitoring picked it up.
Yes, absolutely. I do the same. So I've used a 50 meg file, so I was a bit more aggressive than you. But yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah, because at the end of the day, you want to be almost as close to the customer as possible, because once you know there's an issue, you can try and find out the issue. Right. And so being close to the customer, saying, okay, what is the customer's experience with synthetic transaction? How fast can the file move? Or even, and SCOM already has fantastic synthetic transactions for web. It shows you first byte, last byte, gives you graphs and charts on how fast a website loads. It already has all that built in. But you have that customer experience. Sometimes we get sort of ingrained down at the technical level about what's going on. But as soon as you know there's a customer experience problem, then you can sick people onto it and dig deeper. So I like doing that. Like I've been doing a lot of stuff now. I was doing this deep.NET level synthetic transactions on something that at the end of the day is a website, right? And so if you're doing a website and the website works, the app is working. So you can throw all that away. You just do website synthetic transactions.
I remember before I joined Squared Up, even there was a fair chunk of time and investment going into outside-in synthetic transaction monitoring for Citrix, and it was particularly fiddly because you had to auth. And the buttons would be in different places, but ultimately once it was working, it was a really, really great experience from a monitoring perspective, because that's exactly the same steps the end user would take to use the thing. So if synthetic transaction monitoring worked, you knew it didn't matter about CPU usage and all the other metrics that go to contributing towards the service. You knew users could get in and it was working. Anyway, to move us on in the interest of time, so my next question for you all is...
Hey, Bruce, can I add something here?
Oh, go for it.
If you don't mind.
No.
Okay, I think I would like to share a Microsoft philosophy on what we have learned by monitoring Azure SaaS services itself. So I want to broaden it from just apps into software multi-tenant services, which is practically like future of apps here. And the number one thing that we have learned is every customer of yours, every tenant of yours could have a different experience using your app. So while synthetic transactions have a role, they are only a tip of the iceberg. The real value comes by having application specific monitoring itself. So you really use organic traffic and pinpoint if one of your customers is having a degraded experience. So an MP specific for the application is really what worked for us. And then we have evolved it into Azure Monitor ways of doing things, but just wanted to share that insight.
That's an interesting insight. It does make sense, difficult to do, makes sense completely though, if where it can be achieved. And I'm sure it can be achieved in multiple places. Thank you. Just moving us on in the interests of time, we've only got sort of like 5-10 minutes left of this panel discussion.
Yeah, there's also Bruce. There's a question in the chat as well.
Oh, there is. Okay, let me go to that first. So the question is, I'm currently in the process of onboarding our systems on Azure into on-prem SCOM. First step is to monitor the base KPI for Azure VMs like CPU, memory, disk space. Disk space monitoring seems to be a big task. I've now tried a lot to get it working using either metric logs for KQL, it looks as if we have to create rule alerts in Azure for every VM to set thresholds for us, a combination of percentage and absolute number. Plus, over time, Azure seems to change the way how things need to be configured. Is there anywhere to go to get documentation on how to get such basic tasks done and see alerts come through from SCOM is the question. That's from Thorsten. Thorsten, if you'd like to come on screen, put your hand up and we'll promote you so you can talk. But let's see what our panel makes of the question. I'm just bringing in Thorsten now. Hopefully. There we go.
Well, I will take a shot.
Please.
To be honest.
Okay, sorry. It took me a while to unmute.
Okay, Max, Shashank, you go ahead. Or who was speaking?
No, I think Thorsten wants to clarify his question a little, so I'll give it to Thorsten first.
Oh, yeah, thanks. I don't want to take too much of your time since it's a very short session, but this is what I'm struggling with over the last couple of weeks is getting some basic monitoring using the Azure Management Pack over to SCOM, like seeing, I said, just the disk space alerts for the various drives from our Azure VMs come through into SCOM, and this seems to be a very challenging task. I understand that I need to enable guest metrics and then create some alert rules, but it's not reliable. And apparently it looks as if I have to create alert rules for every single VM, because creating a global one on resource group, I can only have the same threshold. So it's a complex task. And I'm just wondering, has anybody gone through that? Is there somewhere good documentation on how to get certain things achieved? It's just a little bit, yeah, my level of frustration is a little bit rising here at the moment.
I understand that. Panel, would you like to take a stab? Dieter, you were about to have a stab yourself.
Yeah, well, I've been down that road as well. And it comes back to the first question we had, what tool to use for which scenario. And to be honest, this is for me a clear example that it's probably possible, but it's not, well, the best route to go, to be honest. Now, to set up SCOM entirely for just KPI monitoring or something, that's maybe not a good investment. But I'm not quite sure whether in the background everything is changing on the Azure Monitor side. Maybe someone else can jump into that, but I didn't see anything changing that drastically that I had to go in and do all the work again. But again, it's also very hard to set a specific set of thresholds for an on-prem machine and an Azure machine, for example. So it's a bit of a, well, there are some caveats here, but well, I'm not quite sure whether I have a full answer at this point without seeing, let's say, the metrics and how it's been installed. But maybe someone else.
Are we talking IaaS? Are we talking just virtual machines?
Virtual machines at the moment.
Yeah, so you're running the SCOM agent on them, right?
No, on some I can, but this is easy. If the SCOM agent is on the machine, I can have them talk back to on-prem. But there's, of course, virtual machines that are isolated on Azure, so I need to use the Azure monitoring tools to get their alert rules down into on-prem.
Any machine anywhere you can get into SCOM. You can, as long as you've got port 5723 open, you can do it.
Of course, yeah, but that means I need to have the network team pinch holes into all of the network firewalls.
Yes, you would. Yes, you would.
Okay,
that is the answer.
Is this the only way to get this achieved, or is, because it was mentioned before that we have SCOM as a single pane of glass, and to me that sounded as if it's more or less easy to have all of the Azure stuff replicating or showing up in SCOM as well.
Okay. Well, what I do, yes, so I have, a mix of things. So you know how SCOM gateways work?
Yes.
Yeah, so I've got a mix of SCOM gateways in the cloud. Servers with certificates directly on them. So you can, how you can actually do direct certificate encrypted SCOM channel data. from machines, and that's a pain. Okay, that is a pain, but it works. Fortunately, I'm in a position where the Azure architecture can be bent a bit to what I want from where I am, and so I have a solution which has got some gateways, some certificates, 5723 open, and certificates and SCOM agent on everything, and it's very simple then.
Okay.
Yeah, I would probably second that. You actually can build an on-prem gateway and publish it directly on the internet. It's pretty well protected, so no one really would hack into your network. Just put it in DMZ or whatever, maybe whitelist some IP addresses from your subscription. But unless any cloud VM has access to the internet, and it can go to that public address of your own, where your on-prem gateway is listening, and using your certificates, you can put some 5-10 years on those certificates. Internet has really good articles on that.
Only 10,
much
Max.
would be your...
I like that idea. Yeah. So is there? Yeah, that's just cool.
Yeah, but if you have, but if your VM is really isolated and have no connectivity, only its own bubble, there should be either a specific management pack which understands Azure API, and from what I see, it's not really here. Or if you need to create a rule per each virtual machine, it's not really good a thing. I mean, from efficiency, from how SCOM works. But just bear in mind, you can actually create a program or management pack which writes a management pack. So all management pack elements can be created programmatically. And I actually did it for one of my MPs. So you can have like a table with your thresholds, Excel file or CSV file, and then you can have a code which runs on a schedule, look up cloud, get VM list, and then create or update rules in SCOM for those virtual machines and set thresholds from CSV file.
Okay,
it's a bit of development, but it's also possible.
I'm sensing the next coffee break is sorted there, Max, if you're up for talking about that. You don't have to answer now, don't worry. Does that help?
Although I like very much the idea of Max, I would love to think that the guys from Microsoft are already thinking in this direction.
Yeah, and it's great you're here, Shashank. You know, you were after feedback. Consider this feedback. Yeah.
Sure, I'll take that one as the feedback for now.
We'll have it by Tuesday. Thanks. That'll be awesome.
Sure.
It's worth it.
Catherine, by the way, if you could just, if you're really having issues there, you could drop an email to System Center Feedback. We'll have someone assist you.
Okay.
That's a good shout. Perfect.
Are there actually metrics on how much it costs to run a SCOM agent on a VM? Because SCOM agent from time to time sometimes use a lot of memory in CPU compared to, let's say, Azure Monitor, which is built in on the platform.
I've never seen any published, but I have heard of customers do the measurement themselves, essentially. And the answer, well, there will be, as you say, a fixed sort of overhead, essentially, of running the SCOM agent in the cloud. The answer as to which is cheaper depends on what you're trying to do with Azure Monitor. By contrast, it's never quite as like black and white as that.
My question, and that's why I'm asking the panel and also the attendees, is the fact that when I propose to run the SCOM agent on the platform, they always ask me what it costs, because they know from on-premise that sometimes Ops Manager is using a lot of CPU and a lot of memory. The agent, because the agent was, well, not built from the ground up to be very economical with CPU and memory, to be honest.
It actually performs its own, it records its own performance data, so you can build some. And again, memory and CPU usage would be really, really dependent on how many and what management packs do you have. So perhaps it would be unique number for each deployment.
Yeah.
And say if you run those metrics for a while and then just calculate average and then apply prices from those VM tiers, it probably give you a decent number.
It's just when you have an on-premise environment, virtualized one, of course, it doesn't occur that much cost when you have an increased CPU or memory usage. But of course, on the Azure platform, you pay what you use on CPU and memory as well. So if you have an agent which is using a lot of CPU and memory, and you have a couple of hundred agents, there will be an overhead of running the agent on an IaaS platform.
Yeah, I understand. That's why I'm saying so. It's probably hard to forecast that number, but if you have a couple of virtual machines in cloud and run agents on them, and then get their own metrics, so what memory usage they recorded over a week, and calculate, say, average on that, and simply apply that VM price, tier price to those metrics.
Yeah,
and
so you calculate and extrapolate.
Plus one to what Max just said, right? Like that is actually a very key difference between the way SCOM operates and the way Azure Monitor does. Where the logic, the health analysis logic is running either on the agent or the service. So that's why you see variations in how much SCOM agent consumes, and it totally depends on the management packs you have put out there. So you might need to baseline it based on the workload you're monitoring.
Yeah, makes sense. And on that note, that brings us to 10 minutes overtime technically. So we're going to have to end it there. So thank you very much to the panel. Now on the main stage is the next keynotes from the SCOM product group on SCOM 2022. If you like this discussion and want to continue it, there's always the community cafe that's open for this and more, and that's why it exists. So please do feel free to network there and ask these sorts of questions, and of course on Slack as well. Thank you very much, panel. Thank you very much, everybody, for listening. Hopefully this has been awesome. I've enjoyed it, and I'll speak to you all soon. Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Take care.